Third down and 20.
Let's get into a new segment we're going to do for the next 2 episodes, looking at the playoffs. It's called Legit or Not, the AFC edition. We are going to be going through 8 teams in the AFC that look like they could be making the playoffs. We'll do 9, actually, but one of them is like kind of a given. And we are going to be asking basically the question of, can this team get to the Super Bowl? Are they legit? Not necessarily win the Super Bowl. Can they be the champion of the AFC? So let's start off with the Raiders. I think we can do this one real quick. They are not legit. We love the Raiders. We had this Super Bowl bet on them, $20 to win like $1,200 with our Super Bowl party at Hooters, which is unfortunate.
It's not happening this year.
Yeah, it looked really good at the beginning of the season, but we were skeptical that their defense was just not good enough. Their front seven was just too inconsistent, especially against teams that could really just dominate the line of scrimmage. Their offense now has started to turn the football over. Derek Carr's hurt. So you kind of lost that Derek Carr playing as a top 10 quarterback that was definitely carrying them as a football team. And in general, we kind of thought this team is a little bit too young. They lack a little bit of talent on that defensive side of the football. Probably whether it's a stud corner, and some defensive line front seven help they could definitely use. And in the beginning of the season, we liked this team, but we did recognize that they were probably 1 year away. So I do like the Raiders coming into next year, but let's just get through them. They are not legit. Let's get into the first team that we are going to be talking about. We'll start off with the team that we just did an analysis on, the Cleveland Browns. Steed, as our resident Browns believer, do you believe in this team's ability to be crowned champions of the AFC after this season?
I mean, I feel like I have to stay true to them the whole season, right? I don't know. I just said they were a playoff team. The thing about the Browns is, like, if they win their remaining games, then they're 12-4. But, like, that means they would beat y'all, and that y'all would be tied.
He's talking about the Steelers for reference.
Yeah, the Steelers. So, if they can get that makes them win the division. And I like that a whole lot better because they get home field. But let's just say, they go 11-5. They would get the 5 seed. All right, I'm going to say to win the AFC, no. The Browns will not win the AFC. The Browns are a playoff team. That's what I said at the beginning of the year. I'm going to keep it like that. I think this Browns team can win a playoff game easily. But to win the AFC, I think those upper echelon of teams can just, at the end of the day, beat them. Even though I think the Browns can contend with anyone. We've seen that. But I will say the Browns are not a Super Bowl team.
It's funny because I actually believe for this season, not that I don't think the Browns are, but I do think that they could get to the Super Bowl for a couple of reasons. First off, their edge rushers, Olivier Vernon, really been playing at an elite level recently, which is huge for that football team. Baker Mayfield is one of the hottest quarterbacks in the NFL. They have a great run game, which should serve them well come the winter time in the playoffs. And I'm just going through the AFC roster. I believe the Browns can beat the Titans. I believe the Browns can beat the Dolphins. I believe the Browns can beat the Bills on a good day. I believe, and they have, beat the Colts. I believe that they could take down the Ravens. Aside from my Steelers, which I do think that they could win, but I don't think it's a good matchup for them because we could create interior pressure against Baker Mayfield that he could struggle with. And the Chiefs, for the fact that I'm just not sure the Browns' defense is going to be able to impact Patrick Mahomes enough for him to not throw up 35 points like he usually does. Aside from those two teams, and maybe a healthy Ravens. I don't think the Ravens are a great matchup either. But the rest of the teams, I think the Browns can easily beat. So just for that fact, the fact that I think that they could get to the AFC Championship, I have to say they're legit. I'm not going to pick them for the AFC Championship, and if they're playing the Chiefs or the Steelers or the Ravens, I would not be happy as a Browns fan. But the Steelers or the Ravens could easily get knocked out by one of these other ball clubs that I think that they have a worse matchup against. And this Colts game this weekend is going to be telling for this football team.
Mm-hmm.
But for the Browns, I'm going to say they're legit. I think that they're right on that cusp, though, of not being legit. But
yeah, they're
I don't
like
know.
they're the borderline team for it because like I'm gonna say not, but like dude, like that could easily change throughout the next 2 weeks because if they win out and they win that like then they can still win the North, you know?
Yeah,
If
they
they win
could.
the North, that's a 3 seed more than likely, you know, with the Chiefs at 1, the Bills at 2, and that's them as a 3 seed playing against the 6 who would be like right now, that'd be the Colts. You know, like you beat the Colts early on, and then the next week you would play the Bills, probably if there wasn't some depending who that 7 is, if it's the Ravens or the Dolphins, you know. I mean, like if you're the Browns, you want that 3 seed because that's you like that road to the AFC Championship more than you would being the 5 seed where you would play what the Titans and then like it's just up to that. Like I maybe you play the Chiefs the next week. Yeah,
Well,
you
yeah,
would
that I think that's the
if the
big issue.
favorite if the favorites won, you know, and you beat the 4 seed, then you would have to play the Chiefs the next week.
Exactly. You want to
Like
do
that's
anything you can to avoid them.
yeah, so the Browns like they got to make it imperative to win it, and it's the same thing with the Steelers too. Like, yeah, you haven't played your best ball in the last 3 weeks, but you got to think, you know, is this next week a must-win game against the Colts? Not necessarily. The must-win game is against the Browns on Week 17. Believe it or not, I'm saying it. The must-win game for that division is going to be Browns versus Steelers, Week 17.
All right, let's so we're splitting the Browns. Let's go into the Steelers then. Let's say Steelers, legit or not.
Do you want to go first? This is your team, or
I think you know my answer.
I know you're gonna say legit. Dude,
Real quick though, real quick. There are a few concerns that I have with this team. A couple that I've had since the beginning of this. And this is the biggest concern I have for this team and why I think that I could put them in the not legit and I wouldn't criticize anyone for that. A couple actually. First off, their running attack is incredibly inconsistent.
mhm.
They don't have a stable back that they can rely on. That may become Benny Snell because he had a great game against the Bengals, probably the only bright spot for that football team. And their linebackers are just so decimated. You know, losing Devin Bush was tough enough on this defense because coming into the season, that was just a position that the Steelers didn't have a ton of depth in. But then Robert Spillane steps up and is a great player for this defense, and then you lose him too. So it's like, okay, you traded for Avery Williamson. He's an average linebacker. And now you have to rely on Marcus Allen, a safety converted to linebacker, to play linebacker, who also got banged up last week. It's just very tough on this defense that is a defense that has traditionally relied on their linebackers to make plays in the run game and be a force in the passing game as well. And you saw how much better the defense was with Devin Bush playing at a top tier linebacker level and how elite they were in the beginning of the season. And the fact of the
Mhm.
matter is, it's scary that the Cincinnati Bengals of all teams, the Cincinnati Bengals, who won 2 games, now 3, with one of the worst offensive lines in football, according to consensus, was able to control the line of scrimmage against a top tier defensive line of the Steelers. That is scary.
That is
And the
really
fact of the
scary.
matter is that they lost the line of scrimmage on both sides of the football against a terrible football team of the Bengals. Let's not sugarcoat it. The Bengals are not a good football team. Yeah, they had a good win against the Titans and a great win against the Steelers. They showed up, the Steelers didn't. But that's not an excuse. And let's not get ahead of ourselves acting like the Bengals are some underrated menace force to be reckoned with football team. That football team is bad.
Yeah, they're pretty
Their
garbage.
offensive line is still bad. their defensive line is still subpar. They have good pieces, but it's not complete. And I
Yeah.
think it just more poked holes and showed the flaws of the Steelers more so than showed that the Bengals are some underrated, God-given elite football team.
Yeah. I mean, going back to the legit or not, is you're right. Devin Bush was a big loss for the defense, and the offense is just clearly not getting it done. Drop passes and Big Ben only having 19 yards at half or something like that. And running game's so shoddy, dude. It is too. I'm gonna say they're legit, but they're like borderline for me because the thing with the Steelers is that I feel like when they were undefeated, it was all the players celebrating on social media and stuff like this, like Juju dancing on every team's logo and stuff. Listen, you lost 3 crucial games in a row, and what have you done in that time? You have lost the 1 seed. You have dropped now back to the 3 seed, and you're on verge of losing the division now. And if I'm Tomlin, I'm talking in there to the guys and be like, listen, what did y'all accomplish in 11 weeks? Yeah, you won every game, but you didn't win the season. I mean, it's not how you start, it's how you finish. So get that dancing crap, get the TikTok crap out of the locker room, buckle down. Deontay, catch a damn ball, and let's go to work. I mean, this team is too talented still at the end of the day to lose to the Bengals. I think it just got in their head a little bit from the locker room perspective, is just that they were touching the sun or touching God, like they were at the top of the mountain, like they could do no wrong, and they got relaxed. As a Super Bowl team, you should always have that hunger to win more. I'm not saying they didn't want to win those games, but I think they were content in what they did up to the season to that point. Now, with 3 losses in a row and throwing yourself deeper in the playoffs like this, I'm trying to get the boys focused back in. I'll say they're legit because, still you have Big Ben at the end of the day. He's had a lot of success in his career. He's a playoff quarterback. He knows the ins and out. If there's crunch time in a playoff game, and it's a close game, I know Big Ben gives me a fighting chance. And I've seen that team in and out make some plays. And, and I'm hoping, maybe the idea of them getting to the playoffs kind of starts over the season for them. So it's they're starting back at week 1 where everybody's 0-0 and you're not the only undefeated team left. So I'm hoping that maybe flips a switch for them. But I say they're legit, but they're getting kind of borderline with me. It's crazy to say for an 11-3 team. It's like I said before, it's not how you start, it's how you finish, and they're just finishing on a bad note for me.
Yeah. Now, I think that there are some bright spots coming up for the Steelers team. The first off is that their offensive line should be getting healthier. They had to start a couple backups.
Mhm.
And getting Dotson back is going to be huge for their run game because he came up and was a mauler this year in the running attack. And Filer was also hurt. He's a tackle transition to guard. I think he may come back and play right tackle for this football team. Because Chuck Okorafor just struggled at the right tackle position yesterday. A big problem also is tight. There are a lot of problems with the football team. I think that things are going to get a little bit better. They're just in a bit of a rough stretch. And the thing about the Steelers, and it's always been this way, is that they are a team that will play down to competition, but will also play up to competition. So if they're matched up against the Chiefs, well, I don't think that they're going to blow the Chiefs out by any stretch of the imagination. And there always is the fact that the Chiefs could go in and just completely crap on the Steelers. I think that, though, more realistically, is that their defense will give them a fighter's chance in that football game. And if there's going to be a team to knock them out, I think that the Steelers would be one of the best teams suited to doing so in the playoffs. So for that reason, and if you play a team like the Ravens or the Browns, division rivals in the playoffs, I think the Steelers definitely have an edge because they just generally do well in the division, will always keep those games close. So for those reasons, I think that you have to put them as legit, even though you're right, for an 11-3 team, it's surprising that we're putting them more on the back half. But I do think that things will get better for this football team. Let's move on to the Ravens. First off, we have to ask the question of, are the Ravens going to even make the playoffs? And second off, if they do make the playoffs, are they legit or not?
Yeah, what's their record right now? They got 2 games left. I know they play the Giants and the Bengals. So like they're favored right there. Okay, they can go 11-5. So they're slotted at 11-5. The big question is for the Ravens is that they need help from the Raiders and the Bills, because the Dolphins hold the tiebreaker over the Ravens just because of a better win percentage in the conference games. And they both go 11-5. That's crazy to think. 11-5, even with an addition of an extra playoff team, won't make it. I mean, depending if like everybody else wins out, like Colts or something like that.
Well, yeah,
Like,
that's the
if
big
everybody
question
wins out.
mark, is that the Titans have to play the Packers and the Texans. So, okay, one game. The Colts have to play the Steelers this upcoming week, which is at Heinz Field around Christmas time, is never a fun game. And then they get a nice game at home against the Jaguars, against a team that probably doesn't want to win from the front office. The players obviously want to win, but a team that is probably actively looking to not win to get Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah.
So you're right in that you need the Colts or the Titans to lose 2 games, or you need help with the Dolphins losing.
Yeah, and the thing about the Dolphins is like, that week 17 against the Bills already clinched a division and pretty much locked up if they win one more game, they lock up the 2 seed. So I'm sure they'll just be resting their players there, won't be playing. So they should be a win for the Dolphins. But yeah, I guess it really comes down to the Colts. But like, to talk about the Ravens are legit or not, if the Ravens get in, they are legit. This team, like, they went through a little bumpy streak where they got some players hurt and that offense just wasn't performing at the same time. I think the Ravens are kind of getting it back now. They put up back-to-back weeks of 40-plus points. Their defense has always been Super Bowl caliber. You saw it when they played the Steelers on Tuesday night with even people hurt. They were still able to make it like somewhat kind of a ball game, like it was just kind of, they were there, but like you just knew they weren't going to win the game. But I like where this Ravens team is going, and it's not like the Ravens team of last year when they were 14-2 and blah 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 this and Lamar Jackson's now played 2 playoff games. That's what I'm saying. And if he gets in, I just don't think he's the type of quarterback that won't be like he can't win the playoffs. I might throw down a future bet this team winning the Super Bowl because the teams with the outside shot of like besides the Chiefs, I really like this Ravens team because like they're very hot right now. If they get in, they can make some noise. Now, like it would be from where it'd be from the roadside, but like we've seen from Ravens teams in the past, back when they won the Super Bowl with Joe Flacco, they were road dogs. They were just road winning it out, and maybe that's what they need. They don't need the home field advantage. They'd rather have the chip on their shoulder. So I'm going to say the Ravens are a legit contender to win the AFC.
So I'm going to probably regret saying this, but I do not believe that the Ravens are legit for a few reasons. The first being that I don't think this team is going to make the playoffs. I think that right now that the Dolphins are just going to make it over. Now, if the Ravens do make the playoffs, which there's a good chance they do, I'm not saying it's impossible, but right now I just think that the Dolphins have a great shot of making the playoffs. If they do make the playoffs, it's a little bit interesting because if we just look at their couple of recent games, so you smack the Jaguars suck. You smack the Cowboys have proven that they're getting a little bit better now, but they're incredibly inconsistent. You had a really close game against the Browns. I think that the problem with the Ravens right now, and if they were to make the playoffs, isn't their talent level. This team has the talent to get to the Super Bowl. They have the coaching, they have the pieces. It's just I'm just not sure they're going to be able to put everything together. Their defense and their team in general has faced just so much adversity with injuries and COVID and all that, which I do think will help them to a certain extent. But the fact of the matter is that if they get into a situation like last season against the Titans, or this season against the Chiefs, where they are losing by 7 to 10 points at halftime, I'm not sure I trust this team to come back and win that football game, which I think the recent playoffs have shown that you have to be able to do if you want to make the Super Bowl. And until
Unless
they
you're the
prove to
Chiefs.
me that they can, I just am not sure that they're a contender. And it's not about their talent. It's not about their coaching. I just think that at the end of the day, they face so much adversity and have had to deal with so much that I'm not sure they're going to be able to put it all together at the right time when necessary. And I'm just not sure that they're a team that's I don't want to say they're not built for making the Super Bowl, because I actually really do like this Ravens team ranking. I didn't have them, or maybe I had them at 10, but I was saying that this Ravens team is probably going to get hot. Their schedule's favorable, and they're going to make a run at the playoffs. I mean, everyone saw it coming. Um, and if I'm a team, I probably wouldn't want to play the Ravens. But just looking at these teams, if the Ravens and the Bills played, I'd probably take the Bills. If the Ravens and the Chiefs played, you have to take the Chiefs. I think the Titans would still give them issues. The Steelers would just be a close game. Steelers Ravens would always probably be a close game, especially in the playoffs. I mean, the Browns, I think they have a very favorable matchup against the Browns. That's why I took them. But I think the Browns definitely prove that they can tangle with the Ravens.
Yeah.
So I'm going to say not legit. Once again, I may regret that, but until they prove to me that when they're down in a football game, coming into halftime, are they able to switch gears and adjust? Until then, I need to see it to believe it. So I'm going to say they're not legit.
That's fair. But if you're a Ravens fan, it's kind of weird because you're cheering for the Steelers this weekend,
Yeah,
Because
right.
if the Steelers beat the Colts, then
Just gives
and
them
you
another
went
out.
out, yeah, and the Colts win against the Jags, and the Colts are 11-5, and the Ravens went out, they're 11-5. They have the tiebreaker over the Colts because they beat them on earlier in
Yeah,
the
I think
year.
so. Yeah, this Week 17 playoff stuff could get wild, especially for the
Uh,
last wild card spot in the AFC.
Really, some of the scenarios comes down because if the Colts beat the Steelers, then you can kind of start wishing, unless a dramatic upset from the the Jags or the Dolphins losing one of their next two games, then the Ravens are out at 11-5.
And the Titans do have the tiebreaker over the Ravens because the Titans
Yeah,
beat
because
them in overtime.
they beat them early in the year. Jesus Christ, dude, this is all just a cluster.
Yeah, this is really starting to get messy. But let's move off of the Ravens. Let's just knock out the Chiefs. The Chiefs are legit.
I mean, dude, this is maybe not, and this is why. They have some glaring holes. Patrick Mahomes is not the GOAT yet, so he's not Tom Brady. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, has he been the first round pick? I don't know. And their defense, it's decent, it's pretty good, but yeah, they're legit. I mean, they're the favorite for a reason.
Yeah, everyone knows they're legit. Okay, so we got the Titan. Wait, did we do the Titans? Let's do the Titans.
We got the Titans, Colts, and the Dolphins.
Titans, are they legit? Yes or no for you, Mr. Deed?
See, this is where one thing weird for me is because, I mean, really, you could make a case for all these teams to be legit, but because they all could have 11 wins, but because I feel like you have to choose one of the two between the Titans and the Colts to be legit, and I just think I the Titans for me is I don't think they're legit. I don't think this team can win the AFC. And I like their offense and Derrick Henry and Ryan Tannehill, but that defense is just so questionable for me. And if it came down to like a playoff game against like one of these better offenses, like a Bills, a Chiefs, or like a team like that, like even a Browns, like it. And we've seen them play a couple of these teams. It'd be a shootout. Like you would have to win that game doing a shootout because you're not. I don't have any faith in your defense of stopping those teams. And I think at the end of the day, those teams just have better players on their offense. Truly, at the end of the day, that they would win that shootout. So just if like the Titans had like a decent defense in my mind, like it's just you don't know when they're going to give up 40. So I'm going to say the Titans are not legit, and they're just like they're borderline for me because I chose between them and the Colts, and I think I'm going to ride with the Colts.
I'm going to agree with you there. I'm going to say the Titans are not legit, not because I think that they can't win a shootout. I just think their defense isn't good enough. And until they prove to me that that defense can either A, create enough turnovers where it helps out their offense in terms of just point differential with the points that they are going to give up, or B, start figuring things out really quickly towards the end of the season, I just don't think they have a good enough defense for me to believe in them to win the AFC. I think they can win playoff games, but it would take a whole lot for this team to win the AFC. It's not impossible. Like you said, all these teams are good football teams. But the other problem I have with the Titans is just that history is working against them a little bit. Generally speaking, teams with that top tier running attack do struggle in the playoffs, especially because when you're a playoff team, you generally speaking have some good pieces on your defense and a physical enough defense to compete with a team that can run the football. Not saying that
Yeah.
that's always going to happen, and there are good running teams that always do well in the playoffs. Look at the 49ers last year. They were a run-first team, but they had a top tier defense. The Titans have a top 5 offense in the NFL. Whether you believe that or not, Derrick Henry is a workhorse. He's a stud. Ryan Tannehill is playing at an elite level. I'd rather have Ryan Tannehill than a whole lot of other quarterbacks in the league right
Oh
now.
yeah, definitely.
And
Oh yeah.
people need to start really realizing that Ryan Tannehill, you can make a case, is having a top 5 quarterback season in the NFL right now.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you like it or not. There's only, Aaron Rodgers, Patrick Mahomes, and like those are really the only quarterbacks. Maybe
Josh
even
Allen.
Oh yeah, Josh Allen. I'll give you Josh, but even has been struggling recently.
Yeah, he has.
Ryan Tannehill has been absolutely consistent the entire year, and is giving you a great games day in and day out. So I do believe in their offense, and I think you're right. Like they are close. And at the end of the day, I think I trust the Titans more than I do the Ravens because at least I have some consistency out of the Titans. And if they're a team that gets hot like they did last year, I mean, they gave the Chiefs a good run for their money. So I think the Titans are not legit, but it's solely because their defense. If their defense figures things out, which they easily could, then they're legit. And then I'm really scared of this Titans football team. But because they have history working against them with the fact that when you're the team with the best running back in the playoffs recently, you just haven't done well. And the fact of the matter is that if you're going to have a team built like that, you need a good defense, which they don't. It's just a little bit of too much stuff working against them. Now, with the Colts, I do agree with you because I do believe the Colts are legit. I picked them in the beginning of the season to win the Super Bowl, actually. The Colts just have a little bit of everything. Their offensive line is good. Phillip Rivers has been playing much better than in the beginning of the season. He's been legit. They're finally starting to get some good receiver play with T.Y. Hilton finally playing well and guys like Michael Pittman and Zach Pascal really jumping onto the scene. They have a plethora of good running backs, mainly Jonathan Taylor and Nyheim Hines, but Jordan Wilkins can at least play.
He can play.
And their defense has good players on every level. Their linebackers are some of the best linebackers in the league. Their defensive line is probably one of the more underrated groups in the NFL, and they have great secondary pieces. So I just think that the Colts are just a complete enough football team that if they're a team that gets hot, they can tangle with anyone.
I agree. I think the Colts are legit too. And the thing about the Colts, first of all, is like, are they going to get in? You know, we talked about it a little earlier. They're on that bridge of like where if you're the Colts, you're cheering for like whoever the Ravens are played for an upset, or you're cheering for a team to beat the Dolphins. But I do like the Colts because if the Colts get in, reason why I like the Colts is because they have a really great defense. All right, they'll be able to, because of their defense, they'll be in every game. Philip Rivers, even though he hasn't had playoff success extremely in his career, has played in the playoffs, and he's played, so he has the experience. But I also like it because Jonathan Taylor's getting going at the right time. And I think if they get into the playoffs, Jonathan Taylor, like, a couple years ago when the Patriots got in the playoffs, old quarterback, good defense, rookie running back, and Sony Michel was able to have some really big games that really like helped this Patriots team exceed into the playoffs, and they went on to win the Super Bowl. I see that Jonathan Taylor. I see that he can really like take a load off Philip Rivers and rush for a couple 100 yards games and make it easier. And plus, Naheem Hines, it's just like it's a little bit like Austin Eckler, like just that little receiving little back that's always open somehow. And they got really good weapons. They got the short end of the stick by playing the Steelers this weekend. This is a big win. If you win this game, you're in pretty much for the Colts. That's what you got to think about at the end of the day for them. But for those reasons, that's why I like Colts. And I think that's why I like, as if they don't win the division, like they would have to get some things to go their way. I mean, if the Titans lose to the Packers and they went out, they would win the division. But if they get in, they're a wild card team. I think out of any team in the NFL, that would be the scariest wild card team, and I would not want to play them.
All right, let's move on to the Miami Dolphins. Steve, do you believe that actually, I'm going to start this one. I do not believe that the Miami Dolphins are legit. I think that they just have too many holes on the off ball. I do like what I've seen out of Tua, but you can only really trust a rookie quarterback in the playoffs against these top tier teams so much. Their defense can definitely win them football games, but you just look at their skill players right now. It's honestly just a bunch of randos. I mean, you can make an argument that the Bengals have better skill players than them. That the Dolphins skill players are, aside from the tight end position, are comparable to the Jets, which is just, they have a quarterback, they have good tight end play, their offensive line is very underrated, playing really. They have a defense that scores points and creates turnovers for you, but they need help on that side of the football. And it's shown in the fact that they don't really score a ton of points in any football game. And if they do, it's because their defense got a bunch of turnovers or scored points for them. So without that, in an AFC where you have some loaded offenses, I just struggle to see how you could believe that this team could come out and win the AFC.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with you. I don't think they win the AFC. First of all, this is going to be like one of the things where like when people pick games like before, like on Sunday Night Football or Monday Night Football, and they just heavy favorite one team, and then the other team goes out there and wins it, and then you see like a meme the next day. It's like, like, or like right before the game, should I like heavy bet like the Bengals this game? But like, yeah, I agree with you though. Like, I just think the Dolphins, great story, and they're on the uptrend from where they were literally a year ago, from people saying they were the worst team in football history to now they're contending for the 7th seed in the AFC this year. But I just don't think this team's going to make the playoffs. Honestly, at the end of the day, I don't even think they're going to make the playoffs. I truly believe I see an upset coming this weekend with the Raiders, and is right. It's their offense doesn't do enough for me, and like to a point, like you can't rely on your defense to give you free points. And Devontae Parker just hasn't been there. It's just out of a team like between the Dolphins and the Ravens, where like the Dolphins could get in over the Ravens if they win the next 2 games and all that. Is like if the Ravens get booted out, like I'm not going to sit here and say the Ravens don't deserve the Dolphins don't deserve the playoffs because they won the games that they were supposed to and they won it fair and square. But like for a better playoff scenario, better playoff game, like I just feel like the Ravens would put up a better test against teams than the Dolphins would.
One thing I will say is that I don't think that the Dolphins can't win playoff games. It's not impossible. It's just they need their defense to keep doing what they've been doing and get turnovers. And Brian Flores needs to be coach of the year level Brian Flores for this team to win. I think they can win. It's just going to be tough because if there's an offense like the Colts or the Chiefs or the Titans or even the Bills that they have to play against, I think the Bills is a much more favorable matchup. But regardless, if you're playing up against a team like the Titans, I think that's just a bad matchup for this Dolphins because I think that if anything's been proven against the Dolphins is that the one way that you can beat them is just by being more physical than their defense. Don't have to rely on throwing the football. I think you saw that in the Broncos game, and that the Broncos just lined up and said, hey, we're just going to smash the ball down your throat with our running attack and not have to worry about our quarterback having to throw against 0 blitzes and your stud secondary.
Yeah,
I do think they can win a playoff game, though. Their defense that with the Dolphins can win any game because their defense is that good. It's just how many games can they win in a row? Because that's what you have to do in the playoffs. You have to win games in a row, and you have to play top tier teams week after week after week. I think the Dolphins can win, but I don't think that they can win 3 games against top tier teams in a row, especially if they have different things that they're all good at and they play a team like the Titans or maybe even the Colts that can match their physicality.
yeah. I like listen. I don't think they can. I don't think they'll win a playoff game if they get in. Truly, and why is because more likely they would get that 7 seed and they play the Bills. And I think the Bills would just and would beat them, like just straight up, just beat them.
I
Like
like the Dolphins matchup against the Bills though.
I think it would be like one of those scenarios where just like at the end of the day, like yeah, I understand like their defense is very legit and they're good, but like I don't know like what I'm gonna get out of Tua. Like I know Tua's played in big time games, but like if you have to travel to Buffalo and it's cold, and you get popped once, like I just think that's a game that could get a little out of hand. And speaking of, if they do have to play Buffalo, then they play in Buffalo for back-to-back weeks. They play week 17, and then they would play them in the first round of the playoffs. That's pretty crazy.
I'm just saying, do not. The reason I like them against Buffalo really quickly, because we'll go into Buffalo next. I think we're both going to say that Buffalo's legit. Is
Yeah.
that the one way I think I can beat Buffalo is by getting pressure on Josh Allen and forcing him to make mistakes. And I think that the Dolphins are, of all these defenses in the AFC, one of the best teams that could put Josh Allen under pressure and force him to turn the ball over. So that's why I do think, not that the Dolphins are going to be favored, but at the end of the day, I think that the Dolphins are going to make that way more of a football game than people think. I mean, they played them really close in week 2, and the Dolphins defense has come on way better than in the beginning of the season. So that's why I like the Buffalo matchup. Let's get into Buffalo really quickly because the segment is running a tad long. I think Buffalo's legit. They have a quarterback. Their offensive line is great. Their coaching is great. They have great receivers. Defense is starting to play better. So I think that everyone thinks that the Bills have a shot this year. And they get a home playoff game, it looks like.
Yeah, I totally agree. I like the Bills a lot. As Chiefs are the favorite, but I think the Bills could take down the Chiefs if it came down to that. Like you said, they got the quarterback, they got the coach. I think their defense is starting to turn it around now, and we're starting to see what we thought they would be at all year. But their offense is very legit. They can hang up a crooked number in you any given moment. They can put 40 on you. And, at the end of the day, we talk about like Super Bowl teams making a run. You got MVP candidate right there in Josh Allen. That's huge. And then you got your defense playing well, and you're hot. So and you already clinched the division. So like I really like the Bills coming in. And now they still got to get the 2 seed. They're at the 3 seed right now, but they hold the tiebreaker over the Steelers. But I like their games to win out if they have to play for the 2 seed on week 17, you know. But yeah, I like this Bills team a lot. I really do.
Yeah, I know you liked the Bills a lot coming into the season. I know a lot of people like the Bills, but I know that you thought right from the beginning of the season this Bills team is winning the division and they're going to be a force to be reckoned with. So I
Yeah.
figured that you would be picking the Bills.